This is me. So early in the morning. Okay, thank you for having me. I do not have a presentation, so you'll be forced to stare at me all the time. I do presentations quite often, but today is not going to be the case. I have chosen this because this is going to be a little bit personal for me. As you know, as you've been told already, I am one of the curators for Kaunas, the European Capital of Culture 2022 project. And I'm very much excited and happy about it because my city, the city that I was born in, was appointed to be the European Capital of Culture. And the city has this wonderful chance to improve, to change, and every one of us, including me, can be a proud part of it. So when people learn that I am a part of the European Capital of Culture project, which we call ECoC in abbreviation, and sometimes it may sound a little bit woolly. So they usually have two questions for me. The question one, what grand events are we going to have in the year 2022? And question two, any suggestions? How much is it going to cost? Yes. So today I will use this opportunity to answer both questions, and I can assure you that it will be not so easy to do because these are complicated matters to my mind. So the first question about the grand events. I will start by saying bluntly that at the European Capital of Culture project, we think that it is quite possible to have a successful European Capital or ECoC project without any grand events whatsoever. Don't get me wrong, we are not some grumpy cult members, you know, trying to kill all the fun in the world. No, we are fun-loving people, and we know how to make things rocky. But at the same time, you know, I live not far away from one of the biggest concert arenas in Lithuania. Well, Lithuania is a small country, so everything is around the corner here. And in that arena, we had Kraftwerk, we had Andrea Bocelli, we're going to have Bryan Adams very soon, and Roger Waters. So these big international names, they keep coming. And if it's not enough, you can drive 1 hour to Vilnius and you will have another set of international stars, and so on and so forth. So the question is, what is the point in bringing all these people, as good as they are, all over again for the European Capital of Culture project, when we can see them basically every weekend here in Lithuania, here in Kaunas, or in Vilnius, 1 hour drive away from Kaunas, or in Klaipėda, 2 hours drive away. When people hear the capital of culture, they think culture. And when they think culture, they think art. And this is where the problem is. You see, of course, art is a very proud part of culture. And yes, some pieces of art are masterpieces. Needless to say that we can see those masterpieces here in Lithuania, on tour, in Kaunas, or in Vilnius, or in Klaipėda. And there's a Kaunas Biennial, and this is one of the biggest art events in Northern Europe. So basically, every other year, I can get acquainted with the modern art from all over the world, again, a few blocks away from my home. So again, what is the point in bringing all these very important works of art again, or artists for that matter, to the European capital of culture? And more to that, as you all know, God has created cheap airlines for us, so every one of us has an opportunity to fly very cheaply to El Prado, Le Louvre, or the British Museum, and to see all the masterpieces there. Well, of course, in Kaunas, the European Capital of Culture headquarters, when we think culture, we think art. And of course, sometimes we think performances and grand events, and sometimes we even think fireworks shows. But at the same time, we understand culture far more broader. When we think culture, we basically think everything from gardening to circumcision, which, as you know, is a purely cultural phenomenon, and very personal, and sometimes very dramatic. So art is a part of culture, but culture is a way of doing things. Culture for us is a way of doing things. It is a mindset. It is the way we deal with the world and with ourselves. This is culture for us. And therefore, if we want to change the way we do things, we must change our approach. We must change our ways, and we must change culture. And this, my friends, the European Union was created exactly for this reason. The founding fathers of the European Union had this huge task of changing the culture of warfare into the culture of dialogue, culture of dictatorship into a culture of consensus, culture of custom into a culture of law. Did they succeed? Well, partially, of course. But we must know one more thing about the European Union. It is not all over yet. So we still do have this opportunity to proceed with their work. We still have this opportunity to make those important changes in the continent where we live. And the Capital of Culture, or ECoC project, has every capacity to help to do that. The European Capital of Culture project could very well become a testing ground for the new ideas. It can become a role model, an example for the European Union. So basically, it is a learning effort. And I like to think and speak about the European Capital of Culture as of a huge educational project. So in order to change the way we do things, we must learn new ways. And I can see two approaches to learning. So one approach is, we may call it a traditional approach, and I may call it a vertical approach. It is based on authority and theory. And the other approach we may call horizontal approach. It is based on community and practice. I learn from you, you learn from me by doing it together. Well, what concerns me personally, I'm very much a representative of a vertical approach. I was educated that way, and I instinctively choose this way while trying to educate others. Well, me talking here on stage is a good manifestation of a vertical way, because it involves talking. And it is rather simple, it takes less time. And it could bring some evident and measurable results. Well, and it involves speaking, as I said already, and yes, every grand performance, every rock concert, basically, is a manifestation of a vertical approach. People come in their thousands. The horizontal way is far more complicated and difficult because it involves listening. And it means getting socialized, getting acquainted, and sometimes getting stuck. And I hate that way, of course. I hate that way because to me it's too obscure and I never know who is in charge. And this is exactly the problem the white colonizers had with American Indians. Of course, they could have tried to talk them into voluntarily giving up their lands and belongings and traditions and religion, but mass killings proved to be far more effective and quick. I know it is a provocative example, of course, and there's a fallacy in it, because white colonizers precisely didn't want to talk to Indians because they precisely didn't want to listen, because that involves listening, yes. And they had that much disrespect to those people that they called them Indians, knowingly, mistakenly, knowing perfectly well that they were not in India and those guys were not Indians. So it was a cultural problem in through and through. And, well, don't get me wrong, I don't think that horizontal approach is the answer to everything. No, I don't want our societies to turn into hippie communes of the 70s of the previous century, where, well, laziness and lack of responsibility was sometimes presented as a communal approach. No, I don't think so. I think at the end of the day, somebody has to do the dishes, somebody has to pay the electricity bill, and yes, somebody has to be in charge. But a healthy balance between the horizontal and vertical approaches, to my mind, seems, well, a good way of doing things. And this is exactly the way that was initially thought to be in the basis of the European Union idea. As you remember, I said that they wanted to change their culture from culture of warfare into a culture of dialogue, from culture of custom into culture of law, which unavoidably implies listening to those previously voiceless. And which unavoidably means leveling the field, and that is imminently horizontal approach. Well, Europe, of course, has to be properly vertically governed, but at the same time, it is created to listen to those extremely diverse communities that all of us represent here, even here in this room. Because the process of mindset change is a slow process. It takes time, it is difficult to monetize, it is difficult to measure and, well, difficult to advocate. And I think this is one of the reasons, because this is one of the reasons why the European Union loses by points to radicals. Because radicals are perfect representatives of a vertical approach. They are quick fixers. They know the way. They know the truth. And that brings me to the second question that I always get: how much the whole project of the European Capital of Culture is going to cost. So one of the possible answers could be, how much do you think cost World War II? Or how much do you think cost the Serbian war? Or how much costs and is going to cost the war in Syria. Because all these wars, and every war in its essence, is this vertical approach, is this knowing it all. In every war they try to impose their opinion on others. Army is based on that principle. It is impossible to imagine an army without the totally vertical approach. My opinion and my view is the right one. This is the premise behind every war in this world and in the history of this world. And to my mind, it is a purely cultural phenomenon, as much as gardening and circumcision, but far more painful one. So the Capital of Culture project, and I can assure you that, will cost something like 100,000 times less than an average war. And it will be far, far more fun. There's another thing about horizontal approach, the last one I would like to speak today about. Since there are many voices and many opinions, we can never be sure about the outcome. And there's uncertainty always involved. So we must learn to deal with uncertainties in ourselves first of all, but then in our communities. And we must learn to trust. And trust, again, is a purely cultural phenomenon. So next time somebody asks me those two questions, first, what grand events are we going to have in the year 2022 in Kaunas, Lithuania, for the European Capital of Culture? And second, how much is it going to cost? I would like to answer this. Well, every day of learning will be a grand event for us. And second, it will cost as much as one day of peaceful and happy life costs. So with this, I'm closing my vertical approach. I'm waiting for your horizontal reactions. Thank you.